ramping up its aggression against Taiwan on her watch. When Kamala Harris walks in the room, America's enemies sense weakness. And that's why we have got to fire Kamala Harris, not give her a promotion. Now, she wants to represent America all over the world, but she's terrified to face a friendly media. Does anyone think that the person who runs from the friendly American press could stand up to Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un or Xi Jinping? Of course you couldn't. So if you believe that a strong America requires a strong leader, I've got a recommendation for you. Why don't we re-elect President Donald J. Trump? And while we're on the topic, don't send her stolen valor sidekick. Send a former Marine. Send J.D. Vance to be vice president. We got some Marines out there. Semper Fi. Now, Kamala Harris, she gets really mad when I bring up the stolen valor of her running mate. But let me tell you why it matters. Every single person here understands why this matters. Here's the record on Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. He dropped out of the military and allowed his unit to go to Iraq without him. And he knew they were going to Iraq. He lied about it, but he knew they were going to Iraq. Even his chaplain called him a coward. And those of you who served in the military know the chaplain is the nicest person in the unit. If the chaplain is calling you a coward, you must have really screwed up. He claimed to carry a weapon in war, but you ask him, Tim, what war have you ever been in? And the answer is he's never been to a single war. He lied about it. He lied about his rank, and he stood in silence as Nancy Pelosi and a lot of journalists praised him for his service on an imaginary battlefield instead of correcting the record. What won't stolen valor Tim Walz fib about? In fact, I believe at his next speech, he's probably going to say he survived an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. I think that's what Tim Walz is going to claim next time. Now look, we don't criticize, and this is where the media is dishonest here, we don't criticize Tim Walz for his years of service in the National Guard. We condemn him for lying about that service for political gain. It's disgraceful, and nobody should tolerate it. Now, Tim Walz needs to not only explain why he abandoned his Guard unit, he also needs to explain his bizarre love affair with China. Have you seen this? This guy's been to China more than the U.S. ambassador to China. He got married in China. He visited China over 30 times. He honeymooned in China. He taught a course approved by the Communist Party in China. He even brought American high school students with him on visits to China. Now I know, and we all know, that Kamala Harris wanted to outsource our factories and jobs to China, but I didn't expect her to outsource the selection of her running mate to China too. But here's the problem in choosing him for vice president. It's not just about Tim Walz, it's about Kamala Harris's terrible judgment. We do not need a president with terrible judgment. We need Donald J. Trump back in the White House. Nothing matters in national security and foreign policy more than judgment, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows what crisis is going to erupt over the next 4 years. And I got to be honest with you, my entire adult life has been shaped by presidents who threw Americans into unwise wars and then failed to win them. And if we're being honest, it wasn't just Democrats, it was sometimes Republicans too. And what did Donald Trump do? He stood up to the chicken hawks. He bucked the foreign policy establishment. Even sometimes he resisted pressure from within his own party. In President Trump's 4 years in office, we had 0 new wars. We had peace all over the world when Donald J. Trump was president. In the Middle East, he brokered the Abraham Accords, brought stability, and created a long-term balance to Iran. In Europe, he pushed the Europeans to take more responsibility for their own defense so the United States would not have to pay for a bunch of freeloaders. We ought to focus on our own security, not subsidize European welfare. They can take care of themselves. And never forget, as much as the Democrats said that Donald Trump was somehow on the side of Russia, the only president of the last 20 years who had Russia not invade a neighbor was the presidency of Donald J. Trump. He kept Russia in check. He's the only president of our lives to do it. Under Kamala Harris, Putin invaded Ukraine. But under Donald Trump, Putin didn't do a damn thing, and that's because of strong leadership. People respected him. And that's, by the way, my friends, why we were able to defend our own border, is because Donald Trump didn't have us distracted by fighting wars that we had no business being involved in. We got to focus on our own border right here at home. That is the Donald Trump principle, and that's what we're going to bring back to the White House. It's funny, all these people said that he was going to start a nuclear war, but President Trump knew more about diplomacy than any president of the last 40 years. In Asia, he opened diplomatic talks with North Korea after a half-century of stagnation. And you remember when he went to North Korea, he met with Kim Jong-un, the leader of that country. And if you know anything about Kim Jong-un, well, how do I say this politely? Kim Jong-un doesn't miss a whole lot of meals, okay, my friends? And Trump stands there with the media and Kim Jong-un. You remember this? I'd encourage you to go look it up. And he brings the media in and he says, all right, everybody, take some photos of us, make us look nice, make us look skinny. And Kim Jong-un sat up like that. It means something to have a president who's not afraid to go into hostile territories, tell a few jokes, and actually engage in diplomacy. That preserves peace. While all these Democrats lied about Donald Trump being the candidate of nuclear war, Donald Trump is the person who prevented nuclear war. And if we're not careful, Kamala Harris is going to walk us right into nuclear war. We got to kick her out and not give her a promotion to President of the United States. And maybe the most important thing Donald Trump did is he began the process of ending America's economic reliance on China. The most important thing, because Donald Trump understands economic security is national security. The whole world knows that China doesn't have better workers than America, but they're willing to lie, cheat, and steal to win. They lied about unleashing COVID-19. They cheat and they ignore trade rules, and they steal America's intellectual property. Now, Kamala Harris lets China get away with all of it, and China Tim helps her. Donald Trump isn't going to let China steal a damn thing. He's not going to let them steal our factories, not going to let them steal our jobs, not going to let them steal the American dream from American workers. Donald Trump will not allow America to be dependent on Chinese medicine for our children. That's a big thing. You know, so much of what we put into the bodies of our children is made in China. Doesn't make any sense. And Donald Trump will tell China that if they don't stop sending fentanyl into our city, there is gonna be hell to pay. No more of that crap. We need somebody who stands up for American workers. Now, the establishment loves to complain about President Trump's approach to diplomacy. They don't like the way that he talks. Have you seen this? Why is it that our leaders are so careful with their words but so reckless with their actions? I prefer a different kind of statesmanship, one that stands up to the crowd, one that stands for American interests, and that pursues those interests ruthlessly but also carefully, with strong words and the strongest military in the world, but with great restraint to balance it out. Donald Trump's presidency was the first disruption to the failed consensus and the terrible consequences that it wrought. So I say, let him whine about Donald Trump's tweets. Because let's be honest, folks, mean tweets and world peace has a pretty nice ring to it. I think we ought to bring it right back. We have got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to re-elect a man who's proven he's too big for the deep state bureaucracy. He's too tough for the tyrants all over the world. He was too strong even for an assassin's bullet. Ladies and gentlemen, let's return to a time when the bravest man leads this nation with strength. That man is Donald J. Trump. He was the once president of the United States, and we in North Carolina, we're going to make him the future president of the United States. God bless you, North Carolina. Thank you. Let's win this race. Let's do it together. God bless you all.